Hello, KFC SuperCoaches. Welcome to KFC SuperCoach TV, special Christmas edition, very early 2023 AFL SuperCoach talk we're going to have for the next little while. Myself and, of course, the Guru, the Phantom, signing in from South Australia. We've just been talking about our KFC SuperCoach BBL teams, but we're going to just turn our attention to AFL for a little bit because the team picker is out in the last couple of days. If you haven't seen that, if you're a SuperCoach Plus subscriber, you can sign in to the team picker and see all the prices for next year and start putting a squad together and seeing what that might look like. You can still subscribe to SuperCoach Plus now on its own, or you can get it as part of a Herald Sun or Masthead subscription or a code subscription as well. So lots of ways to get in now and start playing around with your KFC SuperCoach team for 2023. Phantom, welcome aboard. How's your team looking at this very early stage? I think we've got about 88 days or something until round one.
Oh, it's never too early for KFC SuperCoach. I've already picked a team, as a lot of KFC SuperCoaches have done out there. And of course, you mentioned some might not know the prices, haven't got SuperCoach Plus. Of course, if you're not going to do that, listen to us for the next 20 or so minutes and look at a few early bargains, maybe some rookie prices, and we'll look at our first pick for 2023. But it's looking okay, Al. I think there's going to be some issues, I think, potentially in the ruck line this year. Some interesting ones. We know Brodie Grundy's gone to Melbourne to join Max Gawn. What happens with those two? Can you pick Max Gawn at the top price now that Brodie Grundy's come in there to ruck? Rowan Marshall, he appears the obvious one, but is he going to ruck solo there? Ross Lyon, obviously a new coach, that's a wait and see as well. So, of course, everything is a wait and see at this point, but there's, as we've seen around on social media and club websites, a lot of players burning up the track already.
Yes.
So I'm sure we'll discuss a few of those, a few bargains appearing early.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there's heaps of cheapish looking guys, or they certainly look cheap at this stage. So, I think one good thing about this year, I think, is that the last couple of years, a lot of people have ended up picking a team with a pretty similar structure. You sort of been forced that way, or it's been the obvious way to go where the value was. But this year, I think there's potentially value all over the place. So we could end up with some pretty different looking teams, which I think could be pretty good. Certainly make it a bit more fun in the preseason, lots to talk about. So I will definitely get to the rucks in a second, but just off the very top, the most expensive players, we can now see Rory Laird, the only player to crack the 700k barrier. I don't think we had a 700k player last year, but Rory's 703,000. Clayton Oliver just missed out, 699k. And Lockie Neal, Tuke Miller, Callum Mills round out the top 5 most expensive players, all midfielders. Rory, obviously a big, massive name over in Adelaide. Do you have to pick him next year, Phantom? And I was definitely going to ask you who your rucks are at this very, very early stage, because that is, it's going to set the tone for really what we do with a lot of the rest of that team. In the past, we've used so much cash there. Maybe that's where we can, be freed up to have a bit more flexibility if we're going a bit cheaper in the ruck, because, I don't think we can start Max Gawn at Siggy's most expensive ruckman, 622k. But as you say, we just don't know how things are going to play out at the Demons next year at this stage. Brodie Grundy's only 512. I think he's priced at about 93. So that one I'm not totally ruling out, because, whatever happens with their rucks, I can't see Grundy scoring less than 93. And probably Gawn might be the one who spends a bit more time forward, which means, if Grundy averages 110, that's actually going to be really fantastic value. But then, like you say, you've got Rowan Marshall at 506k. Just hope he plays as a solo ruck. We know Paddy Ryder's retired, but they do have Tom Campbell on the list, and now with Max King going down, might not play early in the season. What's that going to mean for Marshall's role early next year? We know Tim loves Darcy Cameron at 465k as a ruck forward. There's not many ruck forwards this year compared to last year. And with no Grundy there at Collingwood, he looks like he'll probably be the main man. So that could be decent value. Sean Darcy, you probably can't trust with Luke Jackson over there. Tim English, he scored so well early last year, but lots of injury, concussion sort of issues. Does that put us off him? He's not a dual position player anymore. And then you've got Jared Witts at 605k, which, initially I must say I pretty much ruled him out because, that's so much more than what you would have paid last year. But on the flip side, he is one of the few rucks that we know is going to be the number one man. They don't really have anybody else at the Suns unless Marby or Chol, turns into a second ruckman. And the good thing about Witts too, which we'll get to this maybe a little bit later, is with the fixture coming out, the way the buys are playing out. Now, it was very early to be worrying about buys. But there's 4 buys, and one of them, there's only 2 teams on the buy, Geelong and Gold Coast. So it does give you maybe a little bit more freedom to pick someone like a Witts, who has that round off, but then you'll have a ruckman playing in all the other bye rounds. So it does make me think, maybe I won't cross him off completely. But having said all of that, where have you landed at this early stage with your 2 or 3 rucks, I guess?
Yeah, I've had a close look at Brodie Grundy, as we mentioned the price there. He's not. Max Gawn can play in front of the footy as a forward, marking forward, and then behind the footy too. Whereas Brodie Grundy or can't, at least not to the same level as a Max Gawn. So you'd think he probably does more rucking than play anywhere else, and maybe that's how that partnership works. So I don't mind him at that price, just over 500k. But the 3 you mentioned there, just firstly, I'd love to go cheap in the ruck. I'd love a Braden Price player from last year, the one that we can actually trust to pop up, but I can't see one at the moment. Lloyd Meek crossed over from the Dockers to the Hawks. He's at 431. Is he a chance to take over? They've got Ned Reeves there, Max Lynch. I'm not sure. There's a Sam Draper breakout this year.
431 is not that cheap either, is it?
So there's not a lot in there that we can really trust. Bryn Tickle, we know can hit the Port mid-season draftee from last year, 198k. Scott Lycett, yeah. So it's interesting to see what Ken Hinkley does with his ruck stocks. Scott Lycett 429k. No, he likes Tickle and does go for a bit more than Scott Lycett around the ground in this stage of Lycett's career. So that'll be a watch for the preseason. I think 198k, but the 3 that I've looked at so far, you've got your Marshall, English, and Darcy Cameron. Those 3 look like the ones, the price, the role. If we know that Rowan Marshall's going to ruck all year as number 1, he should be a first pick at R1, given what he's done in the past as the solo ruckman. But again, as you mentioned, Max King, we're not really sure that's going to play out. But those are the 3 I'm looking at the moment. I'd love to go cheap, but I'm just not sure where it's going to come from. It's always risky, the cheap R2, but this year one doesn't even stand out. So we'll have to wait and see for that one. Just quickly on Rory Laird, a lot of expensive guys at the top end of the midfield this year. All the big guns are expensive. They all had good years last year. There's not a lot of really value. There's none of those big names are slipping below 600k. So it's going to be an interesting one. Rory Laird on the back end, his form on the back end of last year, and his consistency at such a high level points to being almost a must-have. But 700k, I'm not sure. Not in my early team anyway. What about you?
I actually haven't picked a team so far. I've got a long list of players I want to pick, and I'm going to have to try and figure out how they all fit together. But I think probably you need one of Laird or Clayton Oliver, because I can't see either of their prices coming down too much, and there's such a reliable captain option every week that you probably want to have one of those guys. But maybe a Jack McRae's a little bit of value compared to where he's normally priced. But I mean, he's not exactly cheap. But you think maybe with Dunkley going, he gets back into the midfield there. Although hopefully Bevo does the right thing. We're never quite sure what he's up to. And I mean, Jack Steele's another interesting one, 604k. You think is a little bit unders for him, but again, Ross Line coming in. I mean, another factor that we can worry about this in a few months' time, but the fact that there's only one practice match leading into the season, we're going to be really watching that one with very closely, because it's going to be hard to know exactly with especially some of these new coaches and new roles for guys who've switched over. So I think maybe Oliver over Laird, but I think I'll want to pick one of them. The other quick topic I wanted to discuss is, when I was scanning through the prices and thinking about how a team might come together, is that, as I said last year and, the last couple of years, it feels like we've had to spend a bit of money in defence, and then, you load up a little bit in the midfield and the ruck. Yep. And then almost by necessity, we've had to, take some shortcuts in a way in the forward line. And it's worked out because, we didn't really have that many high-priced forwards that we wanted to pick anyway. And there were heaps of these cheap guys of a Will Brodie style or Canelio last year that we could pick and cheap, and they made us heaps of money and ended up being in the top sort of 6 or 8 forwards. So it all worked out quite well. But this, I think 2023 is going to be different, because there's a lot of forwards that I really like the look of, and especially these guys who've been given mid-forward status. So you think Dunkley's just about a lock at 596k after moving to Brisbane. We assume, we'll wait and see, he's going to just play in the midfield there, won't be thrown around like he was a bit at the Bulldogs. Canelio's still a mid-forward. You've got the two power guys, Butters and Connor Rosie. both in the sort of Rosie's 513k, Butters 529. Tim Taranto at Richmond, obviously some bias there, but he won the time trial.
Geez,
and
how long? Just quickly, it was 10 minutes 27 seconds to mention Tim Taranto. You held off a little bit there. Great price, as you mentioned, won the time trial. You think he, on the fringes a little bit, a different role at the Giants, but you think he's right in the guts on Thursday night against the Blues, you think?
Yeah, 100%. And then, you've even got a guy like Harry Himmelberg, who was such a great pick last year. So if he keeps that role in defence, 499k is a great price for him. But again, another club with a new coach, so might be a little bit risky depending. We'll see where Kingsley wants to play him. But, so there's really 4 or 5, pretty well standouts there. I think you're all good chances to be in the top 6 or 8 sort of forwards at the end of the year. Always, a bit iffy guessing that now. But, how many of them do you think you can pick to start with?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's I'm jam-packed there at the moment too. Are we going to go 6? It all depends where the rookies come over the preseason. Yeah. Can you go 6 deep there potentially? Just on your Rosies and your Butters. Rosie priced at a 93-point average, but his second half of the year was massive after take out that slow start. So he's got some value in his price there. Same with Zach Butters after a slow start, finished big. He's priced under 100-point average as well. So plenty of value in there. Then you throw in the likes. Now, if you've been following me on Twitter, I think I mentioned in one of these shows last year, we talked about him. Errol Goulden, my man from the Swans, 472k. He's also a mid-4. So he's one I've got to try to get in. I do have him in there at the moment. Dunkley, Rosie, Taranto, and Goulden at F4 in my early team picker team. So I'm going to squeeze him in, but I'm finding it a little bit harder given what we've been presented with, a lot of options there. But I spoke to the hipster over here last week. He was thinking about going the Rosie Butters double, given the value in their price. And those two are probably going to start in the centre square for Port next year, you would have thought as well. Jason Horne-Francis.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about him.
Spoken about him a lot. He's one I wanted to pick when I saw that move happen, 348k mid-forward. Good price. He's showing his potential as a scorer when played in midfield for North early last year. If you watch closely enough, then obviously as a junior as well. But coming back from the surgery on both knees, he's only just started running, I think, in Port's preseason camp a couple of days ago. So, again, he's probably a little bit behind the 8 ball, but I do like the price at 348k. But, Al, what about the bargain? There's a few bargains in the forward too. What do you think? We want to get these guns in at the top end, but then there's so many bargains. Starts with one Bulldog in particular.
Yeah, no, 100%. And as you say, we'll wait and see which rookies, in terms of real first-year players and draftees, are looking good and likely to get games coming into round 1. But we already know there's a whole list of guys who are experienced players who've been in the system for a while, or might have missed a year or two with injury, or even left the game or left the country, and now they've come back and they're really super cheap. So there's going to be plenty of options. And as you say, the forward line, and we've seen, there's a lot of them in the forward line, and we've seen in the past where you can have great success with these sort of players, priced in that 200k-ish price range. I think the guy you're referring to is Toby McLean at the Bulldogs. Yeah. He's only 178k as a mid-forward. Came back into the dog side for the elimination final. Had barely seen him for a couple of years, and he scored 100 KFC SuperCoach points in that game. I think he had about 21 disposals maybe and 9 tackles or something. Like, he's a really good tackler. So hopefully he gets straight in there. Maybe gets Josh Dunkley's spot in the Bulldogs. We just have to hope that his injury curse holds off. I think he broke a hand at training after overcoming all these other injuries. So I don't think that'll hold him back too much. But if he's named in round 1, I think, he's going to be a must-have, and, someone you could definitely start on the field. Other guys around that price range, I mean, Ben King, 176k. Like, his scoring history is no good. Like, he's averaging in the 50s. He's a key forward, all those things. But, I mean, that's just so cheap. You could whack him on the bench. He's going to play. Brent Daniels from the Giants is a bit of a maybe guy that people might have forgotten a bit about. Didn't play at all last year. Had, I think, a Liz Frank injury. He's only 191k. And the Giants, we know they're desperate for a small forward. So you think, it's just a lock to play, which is, half the battle with rookies, especially up forward. Probably, again, is going to score sort of around the 60 mark. But and what about you got Oscar Allen at 210k, and then Anthony McDonald, Tip and Woody at 209k after sort of retiring and coming back. So, none of these guys are huge scorers, But we said that about maybe Josh Impey Jarman Impey a few years ago, and we know what he did. So, and the other one that I must admit I hadn't really thought about until I saw his name getting thrown around on Twitter is Josh Bruce. You have to scroll down to find him. He's 161K. And Bevo in his big interview with Robbo that he did the other day, big exclusive, was asked about Josh Bruce, and he said he's going to be didn't want to commit as but we know Bevo doesn't like to commit to locking anyone into position. But he did throw up the idea of him training with the defenders. We know he played as a defender early in his career, and that's an area that the Bulldogs maybe have a bit of a need. They've got a few tools there with young Sam Darcy coming through, and sort of deciding who plays at which end, but. Especially if he went down back and he's playing, he's 161K. That's going to be pretty hard to ignore as well.
Absolutely. And Bevo said in that interview that Sam Darcy was a bit behind the eight ball, hasn't done a main session so far this pre-season as well. So he's probably going to not start early this season. So it's probably a good thing for Bruce down back. But yeah, regardless of where he plays, even if he plays round 1 down back and then goes forward in round 2, he's still going to outscore his 161K price tag. And that's what we're looking for in KFC SuperCoach. Make some early money. It all depends, obviously, on what your basement price rookies are doing and whether they're getting games, what roles they're playing. We'll find out more about that as we get into January and February. But Josh Bruce, like you mentioned, is going to get out there, going to take a couple of clunks either end of the ground, wherever he's playing. 161K, I don't mind. You mentioned Oscar Allen. I don't mind him too. To click a touch over 210K, but he's shown in the past, he pushed up in the ruck a little bit, takes some marks on the lead, and can kick some goals. Obviously, not Josh Kennedy this year there for the Eagles. So we don't love to pick key forwards in KFC SuperCoach, but that's more when we're talking about keepers and mid-price guys. You're going to get some low scores from these guys, but I think at 210 or 200 and below, you're going to get enough of them for them to make early money and do their job as a KFC SuperCoach cash cow. Our one switching ends to ground quickly. Ricardo's got a question here about Jack Bowes. 277K, I think. We talk about an early look at defence. There's not a lot that stands out in that sort of, 450 to 250K price range where it has in the past. But Jack Bowes could be one of them, 277K.
Yeah, no, I don't mind him at all. And there's a couple of other, really super cheap names down there too. I mean, Connor McKenna was the guy I was referring to, who's been in Ireland for a couple of years. Now he's been signed by Brisbane. I mean, I'm not sure how he gets into their best 22, but I mean, I guess they've signed him, so they must have an idea of how they might be able to use him. And he's only 167K, so if he's named, you pretty much have to pick him. And then Liam Jones is another Bulldog who's been out of the game. He's only 228K, so a few real cheapies there at the Dogs potentially. But yeah, I mean, Bowes 277K. I mean, he scored tons in the past for Gold Coast. He must have been injured a fair bit last year too, was he? Obviously didn't score much, and then the whole the relationship went pretty sour at the end when he was offloaded along with that number 7 draft pick to Geelong. And it'll be really interesting to see how this plays out, because there was a lot of skepticism about there's a bit of a fire sale. Who wanted that number 7 draft pick? But Geelong was insisting that it's not just about that. We really like Jack Bowes. We've been watching him for a while. I think Danger rang him on the phone during the year and was having a chat to him. And Geelong, I mean, it's been a hard team to break into, but they do have to start replenishing some of these older guys. And he's definitely a talented player, and he's shown in the past that he is capable of scoring. So it's all going to be about whether he's got a spot in that team. We saw a couple of years ago with Clark, wasn't it, who had a similar type of player who showed plenty of potential in the preseason, and we thought surely Chris Scott has got to play these kids, and he played a few games, and then he was dropped, and then he was sort of out of the team and on the bench and all that. So it's tricky to know, but yeah, he's definitely on my watch list. At that price, it could be heaps of value. Jumping back into the midfield, there's not. Someone throwing up there, whether he would play in the midfield. I guess that'd be ideal, wouldn't it? He was a midfielder as a junior. But
and the average 83 points is quickly playing in defence for the Suns in 2021. Played 19 games, I think, plenty of loose ball. Behind, obviously, the Cats have a lot of guys in the back half as well that can win the ball and use it well. So interesting to see in the preseason. Geordie Barr, obviously a big Geelong fan, but I think if Bowes can get a game anywhere, I think it'd be good for SuperCoach.
Yeah. Now, a couple of names that we haven't mentioned. Somehow we've got this far without mentioning Nat Fyfe, who's 313K, and he's a mid forward. Obviously,
it's a bit boring, isn't it?
He's injury prone is an
Yeah.
understatement of the century, but I mean, can you pass him up at that price?
Oh, you probably can't. If he's going to play in round one, even if he only plays 50% midfield, 50% forward at 313k, you almost have to pick him. And again, if the masses flock to Nat 5, which you think they will, if he's looking good through the preseason, is going to play in round one. And then if you sort of not negate that risk, the injury risk, but at least most of the KFC SuperCoach are going to be in the same boat if he does go down. But I think there's enough upside there to sort of outweigh that risk. And if he's playing round one, even if he's sort of spending a lot of time forward, which he probably will, I think you've got to pick him.
And the other one who's a similar sort of price, but the first two players picked in my team were Tim Taranto and his former GWS teammate Jacob Hopper, who's only 332k. I think played 7 games last year, just couldn't get his knees right. Averaged about 60 or something, but he's averaged in the 90s the 3 years before that. And just that role, as you mentioned with Taranto at Richmond, I think he'll go straight into the centre bounces. He'll probably be the number 2 centre bounce player behind Dion Prestia, who we know always has his injury issues. So, we're talking about CBA, centre bounce attendances. He's going to have a stack of those. It will definitely make money early in the year. It's just a matter of how well he goes and, can he average enough to try and keep him. But I think there's definitely money to be made there. And the other one in the midfield that I had to ask you about, Phantom, we've obviously you've been on him for a long time, but given that Taranto and Hopper are gone, surely it's Tom Green season.
Lock him in 534k. I'm not sure if you saw on Twitter, the Giants posted a photo of him at the start of pre-season. He's looking even bigger than he was last year. He's ready to take over. I think long-time listeners won't even want to hear me talk about him anymore. But I think I missed it last year. I didn't start him in 2022, so last season. And he got off to a huge start, traded him in, and sort of fluctuated a little bit from then. Was used, as we've seen Leon Cameron do in the past, the former Giants coach, use him out of position a little bit. But again, he has to be their sort of number 1 centre bounce man, you'd think, from the start in 2023. 534k, this could finally be Tom Green's year. What do you think? Are you going to jump on?
Yeah, I think I'll be pretty tempted. It's Adam Kingsley, isn't it, the new coach? So
yeah.
We'll see how he uses him. We know Leon, and then even Spike McVeigh used to throw him around a bit and play him at half forward, but surely he's a centre bounce mid. So yeah, I think if he's playing in there, I think that represents a heap of value, and it'll be interesting to see. Last year the winning ticket really was starting those mid-price guys that really flew out of the blocks like your Patrick Cripps style. So trying to identify the right guys in that sort of price range. And as you say, if you don't want to be spending enormous sums on those top-end midfielders, finding the right ones is going to be a real key. So he's one I'll consider. Sheed mentioned here is another one who was on my list. Certainly when the prices came out, I was scrolling down to find him because I knew he was going to be underpriced given I think he played 1 game this year and he got injured in it. So he only scored 50 or something. So he's definitely received a big discount. He's actually exactly the same price as Hopper, 330. Yeah. And I guess that reflects the fact that they've both been sort of 90-ish average guys. But given the role, I think, I'm obviously clearly biased. I like Hopper, but I mean, he should be playing midfield for West Coast, shouldn't he? Yeah,
I like Hopper too. Just in terms of being a little bit better SuperCoach score, you scroll back to what Dom Sheed, I think he averaged 82 in 2021. But just for example, had 37 touches against the Swans late in the year, scored 75 KFC SuperCoach points.
Yeah,
so
wow.
Wins a lot of the footy, but I think the game that Jacob Hopper plays and what he will play for the Richmond midfield, I think he can make money faster than Dom Sheed early in the season at the same price. Whether you can fit in both, I still think Sheed can make money, but whether you can fit in both your structure, that's probably the question. And you'd think, again, obviously some bias coming in, but the relative positions on the ladder too, you'd probably rather have someone winning it out of the clearance. And even if it's a bit of a hat kick forward, you've got, Tommy Lynch and some of the Tigers sort of swirling around the ball rather than, where the Eagles have been the last few years. Now, good to have Eno on board, obviously, from SuperCoach, what are they? Fantasy Take TV on YouTube. If you haven't caught up with those guys, already doing plenty of content for 2023. A big Shrek, Sean Darcy fan. I think he posted something on Twitter of Shrek clunking some big marks at training over there at Freo. But I mean, surely with Luke Jackson coming over, you can't trust him as a number one ruck, although potentially there's value there as well, given how we know he can score. There is. That'll be a close watch for the preseason too, how they line up. There's sort of even mentioned that, does Luke Jackson play in the centre square as well as Sean Darcy at stages, given how good he is on the ground and how good he is with the ball. But I'd love to pick Sean Darcy. I'd love to pick Luke Jackson. I wish they were playing in separate teams, but that'll be a definite watch. Again, when we're talking ceilings and ruckman, there's no bigger than Shrek, but I just want to see what Luke Jackson's going to do to his role. Obviously, no Rory Lobb over there, so you think Luke Jackson spends a little bit of time forward too, but I think wait and see on him.
Yeah, Darcy doesn't. He's a ruckman, isn't he? He doesn't really play. He's not that versatile, so you think he's going to get the lines? It's always we love the word roller coaster. KFC SuperCoach, and Darcy definitely presents that. Some quick rookie chat before we wrap up. Phantom, as I said, you're putting a rookie guide together, which will be out shortly, highlighting who we want to be looking at from every team over summer and coming into next season. Going through the prices, a couple that stand out. Number 2 draft pick, Will Ashcroft, 202K. You think it'll be a very popular selection in the midfield, given the numbers he put up as a junior. And some guys who were in the mix this year, but didn't play due to injury or didn't get much of a look in, and we think they might be a good chance to get games next year, which will give us a little bit of value in the rookie stocks. Darcy Wilmot at the Lions played in the finals, but not in the home and away, so it didn't affect his price. Campbell Chesser from the Eagles didn't play at all. I think he hurt his foot in the preseason, and Josh Sin played, I think, only got 1 or 2 games at Port Adelaide, but those 3 are all 123K, so they could give us a little bit of a head start in terms of trying to pick some rookies on the bench next year.
Yeah, fingers crossed. All those guys are in my first team picker side. I think you have to pick Will Ashcroft, 202K. He's going to come in and play straight away and score well. I think a couple of other names to watch out for, a little bit more expensive, battle with glandular fever last year. Will Phillips from North Melbourne, high draft pick a couple of years ago, 158K. He should come back in, all going well, his fitness, and play for the Roos. So good price there, 158K for Will Phillips. A couple of, Joe Richards, the mature age small forward. The Magpies drafted mid forward, 117. Dan Batten's man, 117K. He's on my bench at the moment. The Dockers also drafted Corey Wagner, another mature age prospect, featured AFL level before at a couple of clubs. He's a 117K defender midfielder. So some good flexibility if clubs are going to draft these guys to play, you think, or with at least a plan in mind to them to be in the mix. So watch for those guys in the preseason. Charlie Dean was one of those guys from last year, the Magpies, intercepting defender, came in from the VFL but got injured early and didn't play, still 123K. Another mature age. We know we love mature ages in KFC SuperCoach, Rhett Montgomery from over here in the Sandful. I think took 8 intercept marks, 1 game against Port Reserves last year for Central. He's 102K and will play for the Bombers next season if you missed the draft. So there's a hole for an intercept defender if the Bombers need one. We know these guys have come in. Think of Luke Ryan. He's the main one that comes out. Tom Stewart. Obviously, no one's probably going to be Tom Stewart out of this group. But
Tommy Highmore.
Exactly, at the mature age intercept defender, they come in and they play. So keep those names on your watch list. But one more, the player you have to pick in your team picker side every year. You're still at 123K. This could be his year. Will Gould.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to mention him. Well, he re-signed, didn't he? So that the Swans are, he exists. That's the main thing.
And he was an emergency I think he was in the emergencies for the grand final last year. So
yeah, wow.
He's getting closer. They do rate him. They just, could they fit him in the same side as Paddy McCartan, Dane Rampy and the like? That's probably where the issue lies. So fingers crossed for Will Gould. Hopefully this is finally his year.
Yeah, no, I think if he does get picked, I know last year you picked Tom Green, eventually traded him in for the brand, and it didn't entirely work out. But if Will Gould gets a game this year, I don't care how many trades you've got, you're going to have to use a boost. You're just going to have to get him in. You nearly have to VC him, wouldn't you?
Yeah, have to. I can't miss out on that first game either. So hopefully he can push in. We don't hope for any injuries at Sydney, but hopefully there's a spot there for him come round 1.
Yeah, just we'll wrap things up. We'll just very early on to be doing a zinger of the week, but someone got one which I thought was pretty good. So we'll give Chris a little shout out here. He's not a doesn't love my work on the Christmas tree behind me here. I think that's a bit harsh, But thanks, Chris. Thanks. I'm
Very
trying to
good,
just bring a
Chris.
bit of festive spirit to the.
Yeah, we like it.
To the
We want to see
Supercoach
your
video.
want to see your tree, Chris. It was harsh, but we want to see your tree. We love KFC. We love singing. We love the band. I might go for a zinger box after this, I reckon. Yeah.
Yeah, no, sounds good. All right. Lad, we might wrap it up there. There's just a little bit of chat to whet the appetite for 2023. There's going to be plenty of, as I said, there's a couple of articles out already on Herald Sun, advertiser.com.au, all the mastheads, Code Sports, and you can get in and start picking your team with a team picker. There'll be more to come over the next little bit. And then in January, it's going to be all guns blazing. We'll be counting down to round one. But until then, we've got a few KFC SuperCoach BBL games to worry about. So keep an eye on those as well. Thanks, Phantom, for joining us. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and have a great Christmas, and we'll catch you all very soon.
Pleasure. I'll see you next year.